There were 4 young boys who were the best of friends. One night, they decided to drive out into the woods. There was an old cabin in the middle of the forest that was said to be haunted by a ghost. The local people sometimes visited the place to test their courage. The boys didn't believe in ghosts, and they wanted to take a picture of themselves near the cabin so they could show off to their other friends of how courageous they were. That night, the 4 young men set out in a car and drove up a steep and lonely mountain road towards the woods. Eventually, they reached the cabin and parked outside. According to the urban legend they had heard, if you stood at the door of the cabin and repeated a certain phrase, a ghost was supposed to appear. Together, they stood in front of the cabin door, illuminated by the car's headlights, and said, come out, wherever you are!" over and over again. Then they waited for about 15 minutes, but nothing happened. "Just like I thought," said one boy. "There's no ghost." "Yeah, it's just a stupid legend," said another boy, trying not to show his fear. "Come on, this is boring. Let's take a picture and go home." The boys gathered at the door of the cabin and left the camera on the bonnet of the car with the cabin just behind them. The timer ran down and it took a photo of them. Then they all climbed back into the car. However, the boy who was sitting in the driver's seat didn't turn on the ignition. The others waited a few moments in silence. Then they grew impatient. "Hey, why aren't we moving?" shouted a boy from the back seat. The driver didn't respond. He just sat there. "Come on, man, what's wrong with you?" said his friends. The boy in the driver's seat slowly turned and faced his friends. His face was pale, and small droplets of sweat were rolling down his cheeks. "Guys, we're friends, right?" he said. His voice sounded like it was shaking. "Of course we are. Best friends. You guys would always stick by me, right?" he asked. "Sure we would. Through thick and thin. If I were in some kind of trouble, you guys would never leave me, right?" he asked. "No way! You can always rely on us." The young man in the driver's seat smiled weakly and mopped his brow. There were tears in his eyes. In a faint whisper, he said, "Then look at my feet." The other boys exchanged puzzled glances, and their eyes slowly moved down towards his feet. 2 white hands were coming up through the floor of the car. The long, gnarled fingers were tightly gripping the ankles of the young man in the driver's seat. For a few moments, his friends stared in shock. Then suddenly, they started screaming in terror. They scrambled to open the car doors and fled as fast as their legs would carry them, leaving their friend alone in the car. The boys didn't stop running until they came out of the woods and to the bottom of the hill. Stopping to catch their breath, they looked at each other with horrified faces. After a while, they cautiously made their way back to the woods near the cabin. They stood at a distance and watched. The car was still sitting there, the headlights illuminating the cabin. But the young man in the driver's seat was gone.
Subscribe to the channel and enjoy more videos.